Welcome to the second part, where we explore options above 500 euros, but before we do that, there is another option which was kindly pointed out by Older Tech today on the first part video. You can buy almost a whole brand new PC except for the GPU. There you buy something used from the second-hand market, if available, which you can even resell once buying a new one, or you can keep it as a backup just in case for the next GPU shortage, which might be caused by another crypto boom or something totally different. Who knows? Ideally, you should aim for something like the 1050 Ti or RX 470 and higher, or newer, or both. Of course, depending on the price. In general, people change the GPU more often than the CPU, so it makes sense to get a decent CPU and not just the cheapest one. So personally, I would advise you to go get at least a 6-core CPU and avoid any i3s and Ryzen 3s. Anyway, the cheapest PC where we pick only new components, using the cheapest AM4 processor, the Ryzen 3 4100 and 16GB of DDR4, with the same storage case and power supply as always, adding an RTX 3050, we hit just shy of 490 euros. Going with Intel, this time with the i3 12100F, which is also a 4th-core 8-thread CPU, it costs slightly more at 512. In any case, the 3050 is much better than the 8600G integrated graphics, though the CPU might limit us a bit here. Still, we are talking about running esports easily as well as normal games with modest expectations. Yet, I would strongly suggest you to spending a bit more, as for around 600 euros, you can get a very decent rig that is more powerful and future-proof. Here we get a 6-core in the form of the Ryzen 5600, a B550 motherboard, which means that we have PCI 4 support, 16GB of RAM, as we can upgrade to more at a later date. For the GPU we go with the RX 6600. Now, the processor is more capable. We have 50% more cores, so 6 instead of 4, and the GPU is on average 40% faster, while it only costs 20% more for the whole system, you know? So that's why I suggest this.
But gaming, all of these parts are a couple of generations old, if not more.
Which is true, but for such a budget, we can't afford the greatest and latest. So forget any Ryzen 9000 or Intel 200 series, as it would burn through our budget and it would leave us missing multiple components, yet such combos with last gen or last gen parts are more than usable and offer a very decent price to performance. As the budget increases, there are more and more options we can choose. I will showcase some, but in general for AMD go for a Ryzen 5 7500F, as it performs almost the same as the 7600, but it is much cheaper, but without integrated graphics. You can also go for a Ryzen 7700, though this means that you will have less money for other components like the GPU. A reasonable choice is to go with the higher tier Ryzen 5000 parts, like the Ryzen 5700X or 5800X, but ideally with their X3D counterparts. True, here you are giving up future upgradability, but you are getting very decent performance. Stick to a 50 series board, though some lower tiers could also provide what you need, but there are trade-offs. Oh, and don't take the shitty B650 motherboards. You can check what I mean by watching the video from Hardware Unboxed regarding this topic. Just in case, check for any 50 series, so also for 850, while for the 550 there shouldn't be such issues. With Intel, stick to the i5, ideally to the 13th or 14th gen, as they get also the efficiency cores in any i5s. Going with the F version, you might save some money, but it means that you won't have integrated graphics. Why is that helpful? I will cover in a different video. With Intel, you should stick with the 60 or 70 series motherboards. Thank you, Intel, for making stuff so confusing. Please check the compatibility of the processor and RAM you want to use, and also the compatibility from the motherboard's perspective, you know, if it supports the processor, and most importantly, if it supports the RAM you want to use, you know, because it's a waste to overspend on the RAM, which will be running slower, you know. You can ask me if you are not sure about stuff. And talking about RAM, with Intel you can save some money, as there are versions of motherboards that support DDR4. In general, I would suggest going with AMD, as the AM5 platform will be supported also in the future, thus allowing for an easy CPU upgrade down the road, while for Intel, sadly, the socket LGA 1700 will not receive any new generations of CPUs. So, you know, it supported 3 generations, so I would say thumbs up for Intel regarding that, but yeah, if you're buying something, just stick to AM5, I suggest. For around 850 euros, we can get some last gen processor from Intel or AMD. I'm talking the 7000 series, which is more than capable. Here is an Intel version with the i5-14400, a B760 motherboard, 32GB of DDR4, the same storage, power supply and case combo as seen in the first video. The real star here is the GPU. Here we can thank Intel for releasing something that is not horseshit. Don't get me wrong, but Nvidia is setting the bar. AMD graphics division mostly just reacts, thus the sub 300 euros plus tax is as dry as the Sahara Desert. But Intel released the B570, a 10GB card, which is a slightly cut down B580. Note that these two graphics cards require PCI 4 and a new platform, so nothing older than Ryzen 5000 or Intel 12th Gen. There is also the GPU slightly bigger brother, as before mentioned, the B580, which costs a bit more, yet if you can get it, go for it instead, as the difference in price and the difference in performance is not the same. Well, maybe with value added tax or sales tax it is, but you know, still, the B580 offers you better performance and also has 12GB of VRAM, so 2 more, so check it out. Now let's talk above 800 euros PC range. Here we can consider also other GPUs and not just Intel, but keep this in mind that Intel's B580 is on par or even it beats the RTX 4060 as well as the RX 7600, including ray tracing titles, though I would not push too much ray tracing on such a tier of cards, though it is doable. Except with AMD's offering, which are shit in the 7000 generations, but it looks like the 9000 generation is doing very well regarding ray tracing. So I would suggest you to avoid the RTX and AMD card. Just go with the Intel B580. The next GPU that I would suggest is the RX 7700 XT, which outperforms Intel's in raster and has 12GB of RAM. And if you manage, you can maybe even get the RX 7800 XT, which has 16GB of VRAM, and it's a decent 1440p graphics card, while Nvidia's offers in the form of the 4060, 4060 Ti or 4060 Ti 16GB are just shit, you know, so stick to Intel in lower tiers. If you go in a little bit higher tiers, I suggest you to stick with AMD. Here is a build with AMD for around 1000 euros. So as said, you can make different combinations. I do think that watching my video does help a future potential buyer better understand what he can get, or she. In any case, if you have some questions, feel free to ask them in the comment section below or in the Discord server. Please like the video and share it with people who might be interested in this topic, especially if they are in the market for a new PC. And I will see you all guys in a new video. Gaming Teacher out.